Let's talk about the components I'll be using to create this project. I'll be using Flutter as the main framework. It is cross-platform, single code base, so I can easily move my project from Windows to Mac OS and Linux if I want to, and even mobile devices like Android and iOS. Within Flutter, I have a few specific packages I'll be using. The first one is Provider, which will be used to manage my application state. You can see that it is very liked, and it is also a Flutter favorite. It is perfect because it also is supported on Linux, Mac OS, and Windows, and even the other 3 platforms if I am going to be using that in the future. We also have ISR databases, so while Provider will be for the app state, which is not persistent, so it will not last forever. It only lasts as long as the user is using the application. ISR databases will be persistent, so all the information that goes into this database will be locally on my computer, and even when I close the application, it will persist. It will stay there. It will be there for me to grab later and look back at my tasks or look back at my settings that I've set and so on. And this is also supported on Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. I've used Hive before, which is another database type. It's an object storage just like this one. The creators of Hive have actually created ISR database, so I'm excited to see what this one is about. I've not used it before. So let me go ahead and get a basic desktop application started, and then we can go from there. The desktop application is working now. I have this project called Taskboard up and running, and this is like the initial project that comes with every time you create a new Flutter project. It's just this basic application where if you click this button, it just increments the amount of times the button is clicked. And as you can see, it's going up. So Flutter offers some cool hot reloading options. I can make some quick changes. For example, if I change Flutter demo homepage, which is right up here on this screen, I can go and change that to Flutter demo homepage 2. And if I just click save, you'll see it instantly goes ahead and updates here. I've also installed all the packages that we'll need that I talked about earlier. They can all be seen right here: pub/spec-yaml, the provider, and ISR package. I've done some basic setup work here, just created some folders to hold all my code and to organize it a bit, and then I also kind of cleaned out the old code. So now all we have is this window with just the hello world text, which I have defined right here. Now I'm going to go ahead and get started on the actual implementation. Okay, so I have this design that I created for what I want to store in the database. I have these 2 different types called a task and a board. A task just has the content, so like do task is just a string value. I have a column that task is currently in, so it could be in progress, backlog, done, for instance. And then I also have the order at which it's in that column specifically. So the order inside of the column. It could be in the first spot. It could be all the way down at the bottom. I also have the associated board. This comes back to the recursive thing that I was talking about, where each task, once it's clicked, will open a board. And associated board points to a board type. So you can see this is what a board type is. A board just has a name, some columns. So this would be like all the columns in a list. So it would be backlog, in progress, done, for instance. And then it also has all the associated tasks, which is just a list of task types. So a list of these. Then what I decided to do was kind of combine these 2 into one and call it an item, is what I'm calling it now. I want to differentiate between a task board, so I called it an item. And again, the item has a lot of attributes. So it has the task's content, the task column, the task's order, but then it also has board attributes like the board name, the board columns, and then also the parent item. So this is going back to this tree diagram where each item is a board and each board is an item. So each item must be a part of a board, and a board is just an item now. So again, it's going back to an item type. I am sure that's really confusing how I'm saying that, but hopefully as time goes on and you get to see the implementation, it'll make more sense. And then I just added a few more attributes in this final version where I added an ID, created date, last updated date. And then we also have the other values from the previous. So this is the object type that I'll be storing in the database. Let me go ahead and now model this up and get it all set up in our project so that we can go ahead and start accessing the database and accessing these items and creating them and so on. So I went ahead and defined the item type. This is what we'll be storing in our database. ICER has this nice way of generating the code. So we can just go ahead and run a simple command. To do this, note that I did have to actually add some more dev dependencies, the ICER generator and the build runner. I also added the ICER flutter libs. And now if I just go back here and I run flutter pub run build runner build, it should generate an item.g.dart file. So let's just see if that happens. And this will have a lot of the functionality that ICER provides that makes ICER so great. And there you go. So we have the item.g.dart file. And in here, we can probably see a lot of different aspects. For example, you can see that it creates a board column type. It creates a lot of property schemas. Also creates a parent item and a board item as a link schema. But that's because I'm using links here. I should probably talk about that too. I'll showcase what that is in just a bit. This is just a bunch of functions that ICER makes out of the box so that you can use it. You can use functions like less than, and you can actually query too, which is very useful. So if I go back to item right here, you'll notice that I use something called ICER links to link the items. What this basically means is that the parent item is a link to a item object, which is in the database. Similarly, for board items, there's something called ICER links with an S, which just means that it can be a list of items. So the board item just links to a bunch of ICER links. And what this allows us to do is it prevents us from having to store a lot of items within one of these items itself. Instead, what we can do is we can almost store like a link to the items, which is already stored in our database. Now that we have this done, we can go ahead and start setting up our state. So let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll be right back. Okay, there you go. So I've gone ahead and initialized a new instance of ICER. I have set up the app state using provider, and you can see inside of the app state, I pass in that ICER instance, and I set the value right here. So this will allow me to query and add information to the database by simply just calling the app state, which should be accessible throughout our code base. Now that I have this done, I'm going to go ahead and get the actual implementation started. Before I move forward, I did want to mention that I am by no means a Flutter expert. I am most of the time learning as I go. And in fact, I would say that most of the products that I work on this channel, I will not be an expert in what I'm working on because I normally tend to pick up new technologies very quickly and just start using them. If you all have any suggestions or any ways I can improve, I would love to hear your feedback in the comment section and implement it. Unfortunately, I do think I'll be wrapping up most of these projects, but maybe once I'm done with the project and I posted the video and I get some feedback, I can create a new video about the feedback that I received and I can make those improvements. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. And now I'll be going ahead and getting back to work. So after I made the app state changes and so on, I actually didn't run the code and I saw this error right here. Argument error, failed to load dynamic load library. And I'm going to go ahead and try to debug this live. So that's not working. Then I'll go ahead and stop the instance and try running it again. As they say, always try to turn on and off. Solves most of your problems. So let's see if I can run this. Oh, okay, interesting. So we have to developer mode in your system settings. So let me just open up my settings here. Developer mode. Developer settings. Developer mode off. Let me turn that on. Click yes. And then let me go ahead and run and debug. And there you go. It's working. That's perfect. I wanted to come clean a bit. I have worked on this project quite a bit offline, and my initial intention was that I wanted to have a high quality video, and if I wanted to do that, I would need to kind of have the project already done, and then I could almost regurgitate the code on screen and explain my thinking process and focus more on the video quality rather than the project itself. But I'm very quickly realizing two things. First of all, as a devlog, this doesn't seem very authentic. It seems scripted, which I'm not a huge fan of. But the most important thing that I don't want to happen at all is that it makes it seem like I'm this perfect coder, that I'm just writing this perfect code on the first attempt, which is not true whatsoever. And I've spent countless hours debugging before I got to the point which I will show you soon. I've gone ahead and copied all the code over. So let me show you what I have so far. Before I do that, I did want to show this really cool link that we have here that ISO provides, where it allows you to see all the objects currently created in your database. We can see that we already have this main object, which is there because when the user starts using the application, they need a board to start off with. And this item behaves as the first board. It's only initialized once when the user starts using the application, and it's not created again. There won't ever be a parent item for this, but there will be many items that it points to. Let me go ahead and show you what the application looks like. So we have our application right here. We have the backlog, in progress, and done columns. You can go ahead and add a column if you want by just simply clicking this icon right here, and you can add it to the left or the right. So I can add it to the right. I still haven't added an implementation so you can edit the name yet, but you can do that. You can also go ahead and remove this one. So we go to remove that, but to add an item, it's pretty simple. You just go down here, you do taxes, for instance, and you can see that in the database itself, it creates another item. It's called do taxes. If you move it from backlog to in progress, you can see that the column section, the column attribute changes. So if it's in progress now, when I go to done, you can see that it went to done. Also, we have the recursive functionality implemented. So if you click on this right here, you can go ahead and add tasks that are specific to the do taxes task itself. So we can do like gather documentation, fill out forms, and you can see that it created the two tasks right there, and it created them down here. And if you look at the parent, for example, for the gather documentation, if you look at the parent item, it's the do taxes. And if you look at, it has no board items right now because it has no items within itself. But if you look at the board items for our do taxes, you can see there's two of them here. There's the gather documentation and the fill out forms. I hope that gives a better idea of what this recursive functionality I'm talking about and the item object that I created and what it's doing and how it works. I've also added this really cool preview. So if I go back, I've added these two items underneath the do taxes. You can see that it shows me those two items right here. And if I hover over them, I can actually see the content of them. So I can quickly glance at the board for this specific task. If I click in here and let me just go ahead and maybe add another one to the right. And let me add another few tasks like task 1, task 2, 3. I can go ahead and move these over here like so. And now if I go back again, you can see again, I have the column showing and I have it showing what tasks are in each column. So you can see this is task 1, 3, and 2, and so forth. So this is what I have implemented so far. There's still a lot of work to be done. I want to definitely work on adding more functionality into this input field. There's a lot more to do with the cards themselves to make them look much better, for instance. This can obviously move down here to the side. You can see that the path, this should say main on top of here because this is the main board. And then when I click on one of these, it goes from main and then it goes to do taxes, which is a board that I am showcasing. So there's a lot of bugs, minor bugs to fix. There's a lot more to do. When I create a new column, it does not allow me to right now edit. So if I do edit, oh, it does allow me to edit. I forgot that I implemented that. Let's see if this works actually though. So if I do before backlog, save that. Okay, I did save it. Let's see if that worked though. I'm not sure if that worked. So if I save it, it's not closing. So let me go and reset it and see if that brings up. So I reset it. No, it did not. So there's definitely some functionality missing there too. But now that we are caught up, let me go ahead and start working on our next item.